you. Okay, we're live on YouTube and microphone is on.
It's 5 p.m. on Tuesday, December 14th, 2021. I call this public meeting to order. We will have a roll. Corey Gardner Jr., Corey Gardner Jr., Brian Pupil, here. Dave Garcia, here. Joseph Ramos,
Here.
James Lucy, here. Thomas Salinas. Let the record show there is a quorum of board members present and that this meeting is posted in accordance with Government Code Chapter 551, State of Texas Open Meetings Act. The Kingsville ISD Board of Trustees will conduct a public meeting to discuss the following: overview of the school financial integrity rating system of Texas first. Dr.
Good evening, Board Vice President. This is a required public meeting that we have to have every year. Since it is a public meeting, when I'm finished, I will open up for comments to the public. This required meeting has to do with two things. One is the financial health of the district, and two is the financial practices of the district. We get a rating every year from the state based on how we do in both of these areas. So this is the 2020-2021 financial rating, but it is always a year behind. It uses the data from 2019-2020. We have not finished the audit yet for the last fiscal year, and that will be coming to the board in July. So this is for the 1920 year. And FIRST is an acronym. It stands for Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas. And again, it looks basically at two things. It looks at our financial practices and it looks at the financial health of our district funds. Those are the different scores that we can receive, and we have received a B, B plus and 88 out of 100, and I'm going to go through the 20 indicators describing how we ended up with that rating. So the first four indicators are known as critical indicators. If we fail any of those, we fail the first rating. We get a rating of F, but they don't give us any points. The first of those is, did we file the annual financial report on time? And we did. We filed it on January 26th. It does have to be approved by the board before I send it in, so this next year's report will be, the audit will be approved in January, and we will be sending it right after the board approves the 2020-2021 audit coming up. Was there an unmodified opinion? A modified opinion is when the auditor disagrees with the financial statements presented by the district. So an unmodified opinion is what we want, and that is what we received. Did we pay all debts at year end? And yes, we did. We didn't have anything outstanding that we did not pay. And the last critical indicator basically also has to do with debts, but specifically with debts to government entities, and we also complied with that as well. There is no indicator number 5. There used to be a 5, but they removed it a few years ago, and they have not since replaced it, so it's vacant. Indicator 6 looks at our fund balance, and it's an average of the last 3 years. Was there more than a 25% decrease in the last 3 years? And there was not. You can see it was a 5.67% decrease. And then they also have a second part of that. You can meet either one of those indicators. The other indicator is, do we have at least 75 days of fund balance? And we do not. We currently had 71 days of fund balance. Luckily, we only need to meet one of those 2 indicators, and we did pass the first indicator. A healthy fund balance has at least 90 days of operating expenditures. In other words, if we didn't get any revenues, we would be able to operate for 3 months. That is a healthy fund balance. Now, they don't grade us down unless we have less than 75 days, or also if we've had a big decrease in fund balance. But luckily, since they average it out over 3 years, we haven't had a huge decrease. Indicator 7 is days of cash on hand. So that is different from the fund balance. It includes everything we have in the bank. It includes all our investments that we have with Textpool and with Lone Star, minus any outstanding purchase orders that we have already committed to pay, or any outstanding payroll as well too. And right now we have $12.5 million of cash on hand, which is calculated to 146.59 days of cash on hand, again, versus the 71 days of fund balance. So we are well within. We do not have a cash flow problem. We get money from the property taxes most months of the year. We get money from the state 9 months of the year as well too. And we get that well in advance from when we need to pay our debts. So we are not in danger of defaulting at all. Current assets to current liabilities. So current refers to the, it's 1 year. So current liabilities, anything that we have outstanding that we have to pay in the current year. Current assets, again, we talked about the amount of cash that you have. Basically anything that is liquid. It does not include land or property. It also includes delinquent property taxes, but anything that we are expected to have liquid assets within the year versus liquid liabilities. And you see that our rating is very low there. That is an area where we're struggling right now, and where we're trying to improve. A big part of the current liabilities is we had to pay the state back. It's called a settlement that is done at the end of the year. We had to pay them back $3.5 million because we didn't have as many students attend the school year. You get paid based on the number of students that come to school and the demographics of those students. Now, 2 years ago in 2019, my predecessor predicted that we would be having a lot more students at this time. So they pay you ahead of time based on what your predictions are. So they've been paying us a lot of extra money that we have to pay back at the end of the year, which isn't a problem. We just have to know that we have to pay it back at the end of the year, and we have to plan for that. So that goes into the current liabilities as well.
I have a quick question. How accurate are the demographics of our students being reported to the state?
Well, at the beginning of the 2-year biennium, we have to estimate what we're gonna have for ADA, and we have to estimate what we're gonna have for our demographics. They are much more accurately being reported now than they were 2 years ago, or much more estimated. Now, they are reported through PEIMS during the year. And we're gonna take a look at our PEIMS data in just a minute, and you'll see it's very accurate.
There's a little sheet of paper when everybody registers that says, you know, if you fill this out, you need government funding, or if you meet a certain threshold. Does that help when it comes to pointing what type of demographic we have here that would help us figure that out?
Yes, those registration papers at the beginning of the year, they definitely do.
Dr. Bitts,
Yes, sir.
you mentioned that they pay us in advance, and when the numbers aren't there, this is where we have to pay back, is that correct?
That's correct.
This
So-
year, though, our numbers have been somewhat increasing for ADA, is that correct?
Yes, however, they were reported pretty actively. So I reported a 2650 estimated ADA for the next 2 years. We're not gonna quite reach that, but we're gonna be close. But before in the past, we had reported a 3100 ADA, and we've been getting close to 2700. And because of that, we've had a huge settle up. We had 3.5 last year. We're gonna have a 5.3 settle up this year. Part of that is due to COVID too. So as long as we're aware of that, that we're monitoring that, and we're gonna have to give it back at the end of the year, and we're not spending all this extra money, we're okay. But I think moving forward, starting in the next fiscal year, I believe we have much more accurately projected the demographics and also the ADA as well too.
Thank you, Dr.
You're welcome. Okay, so general fund expenditure analysis. So this one looks at, did you balance the budget? And we did not in 2019, 2020. Biggest reason for that was COVID. We had over $2 million of COVID expenditures. Second biggest reason for that is student attendance. We didn't accurately project the amount of ADA that we would get. So those are the biggest reasons why we had a deficit. Now, we still got 10 points for this indicator because they have a fallback. They have, as long as you have at least 60 days of cash on hand, basically as long as you have enough money to pay your debts, we're still going to give you the 10 points. But it is a cause of concern anytime you have a deficit in the year. But again, a big part of it was it being a COVID year. And then another thing to go along with that is they've had some interesting accounting that TEA has told us. For instance, that year they gave us a bunch of money for ESSER. And they said, here's $1 million for ESSER. So what we're going to do is we're going to take $1 million away from your other revenues. Well, since they gave it to us at the very end of the year and we hadn't spent it yet, our auditor recognized the $1 million in the following year. So it caused our deficit that year to really be 2.7 when really because of an auditing entry, it was 1.7. So ESSER has, and the accounting that goes along with ESSER has really changed or affected the deficit for the year. Now, our goal is when ESSER is all said and done to make sure that the district is in good financial health, that it has a good fund balance and that we can still pay all our debts and we're not relying on ESSER to pay for all those debts. So the next slide is indicator 10, the debt service coverage ratio. So what this looks at is, are you predicting correctly the amount of money that you're going to receive? Because you make a prediction at the beginning of the year based on looking at your ADA and your demographics. Are you predicting well enough from the end of the year when you have to settle up? For a 3-year average, we did pretty good. But again, we did have an issue last year. This one, we did score 5 points. That is the maximum that you can score on this indicator. Okay, long-term liability to total assets. did you have enough? So this is one where we struggle a little bit as well. So long-term, the major additions from short-term are that long-term include all our bond debt. So you see that 58 million there. Most of that is our bond debt. We probably won't finish paying off our bonds completely till 2043. And it won't be till 2033 till we see any type of maybe decrease in as far as our need, as far as our tax base that we need. We have to pay about $2.5 million of principal and $2.5 million of interest every year, approximately till 2033. And then you see that our total assets, the main addition on the bottom denominator there is our land and our improvements. Every time when we built the new high school, it was a significant increase to our assets, to the building, but then again, every year the buildings depreciate as well too. So that number is going down when we have aging buildings and facilities. It is going up whenever we either purchase new land or whenever we build on that land. Our debt ratio. So this has to do with how much revenue are we bringing in from our property taxes compared to the amount of debt that we have. And we have been struggling for years with that because we did not collect enough local taxes to pay our debt. We have finally fixed that. We have been decreasing our M&O tax rate required to and increasing our INS at the same time. So the other thing that affects this is also your tax base. We just had a huge dump in tax base this year. So since this is a lagging indicator, I expect this indicator to also maybe score 8 points next year as well. But the following year, we have a good chance of hitting 10 points because now that we have a greater tax base and now that we have adjusted our INS tax rate to pay adequately fund our debt payments, I expect in 2 years that this should be 10 and hopefully 10 moving forward. Administrative cost ratio. So this looks at what percent of your district expenditures are going to administration versus instruction. So this doesn't take into account everything in the district as far as like maintenance and district operations. All it takes into account is district administrators, basically the functions that come out of this particular building compared to instruction. And to get 10 points, you need less than 11.51% ratio of administration to instruction, and ours is 12.62, so that's why we scored 8 points instead of 10 points on this indicator.
Does that set off any red flags for anyone?
Yeah, because you didn't have a whole lot of administration up here during those years, and now we have a lot. So is this indicator is going to go, our score will go down lower on 1 year.
It's percentage above what you need to have 10 points, which is over at least 1%, or maybe more. And it's administrative costs. Administrative costs ought to be the easiest cost to control. Is that a correct assumption?
Depends on the task at hand.
Okay.
We need administration, we've been lacking leadership.
I mean, that's the one, that's the thing that jumped out at me. We're showing, you know, how much we spend per student, teacher to teacher student ratio, we show that. It's not above, this is above. And that's why I see that, you know. Only how we equate to in dollars, that 1%.
One thing that is going to affect this in a positive way is that we gave the largest raise to teachers that we have given in a long time, and that is going to.
This isn't a teacher thing, this is a
Well, that's gonna, the denominator is gonna influence how much is paid toward instruction because of the significant raises to teachers.
And there should be some administrative savings, maybe not immediately, but eventually in the consolidation of schools.
That is correct.
This building.
Back
So
to
this
the
building.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. It is mainly district administration that they're talking about in the city.
But what's that extra percentage or extra 1.1%? What's that equate to in dollars?
Or is that just
It's like one position. Is that just one extra position? Or is that 3 extra positions? I mean,
Okay,
what's that 1% as far
That's
as?
something I can look at and get for you. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head.
Now, at meetings, that's a pretty common, I'll look at the numbers and I'll get back with you. But I don't recall people getting back with me.
Yeah.
And it's not just this, it's other things as well. If we're gonna get back with us, then get back with us. By the next meeting, I would say would be sufficient. And it might only be $100,000. If it's $100,000, fine. I don't know what that percentage means.
And I see your concern, and I know it's gonna go up higher the next year or two, because during that year, we were down to HR, we were down a lot of head administration.
If we just see the mathematical formula.
Okay.
That
And
indicates.
that's something I need to ask here, because I've been watching the scores. It's always 8 points, 10 points, or 5 points. Is it possible to get 9 points?
No.
Okay.
They
So
give
this
it
is the first drop down.
even numbers,
Okay,
except for those indicators that are only worth 5 points.
and that's fine. That's what I was trying to find out, if there's a level in there we didn't know about.
All right, I will get that information for you. What amount of money it takes to move that needle, that 1.1% to get 10 points. Okay, student to staff ratio. So this again is a 3-year average. So they looked at student to staff ratio for 2017-18 and 2019-20. Now, this is one that we stayed about constant, but it is one that eventually, a couple of years from now, we could see a drop in this indicator, since there is one campus where we have a lower student to teacher ratio. But that drop will be seen 2 years from now. However, you see that 15% is such a low bar. Like our student to staff ratio changed 0.34% in that 3-year gap. So we might still be okay anyway, because again, that is a big drop that you have to get to lose any points on this indicator. Pupil projections. So was our ADA within the allotted range? We scored 10 points on this because again, 20% is a low bar too. To me, the 12.141% variance was significant. You look at, so in 2019, you always predict for the next biennium how many students you're going to have. We projected 3,079, and we actually only had 2,697. And to me, that's basically the reason for the $3.8 million settle up that we have at the end of the year. To me, that's a big difference. So we're going to do much better and probably be less than 100 moving forward. We might have one more year where, because it's a lagging indicator, but then we should be much better moving forward. But again, I don't see us losing points on this just because the bar 20% is, it's a very low bar. PEIMS data quality. So Sandy Galindo and myself worked very hard with the PEIMS specialist to make sure we went over all the financial reports in PEIMS. And as you can see, they look at so many different indicators, and we were only off in all the indicators summed together $52 out of all of that money. Now, that doesn't mean we lost $52 million. That means it's a coding where you have to code all the money in your finance system, and you have to code all the money in PEIMS as well too. They allow a 3% variance, and ours was like much lower than 0.00. I think it's like 0.00002 or something percent. It's very, very low. So we did a good job of working with PEIMS to make sure all our financial data was correctly entered into PEIMS. Weaknesses in internal controls, just making sure that your practices in the offices are good. This is not scored, but we passed this indicator. Are you in compliance with grants and contracts and laws with local, federal, and state funds? We were. Did we post all the required financial postings? Yes, we did. Did we talk about property values as we were going through the budget process? So I had to submit documentation that on budget workshops and board meetings that we did talk about property values as we were going through the budget process. So those are the scores for the 1920 financials. It is now we're required to present at the board meeting 2 years of financial data. So last year we had 96 out of 100, and the biggest reason for that is because we did a lot better on our current assets and liabilities. Basically our financial health of the district was much better before COVID than it was after COVID. So you see all the ratings there. Yes, we passed all the critical indicators. The ones that we lost points on, again, are long-term liability to total assets ratio. That's a function, again, of us having a lot of debt. We're basically maxed out on our debt and can't take out any additional debt for at least 10 years and possibly longer than that. And last year, again, the administrative cost ratio was also an issue too, but all the other financial indicators were much stronger before COVID than they were after COVID. So also as part of this meeting, besides the financial rating or the first rating, we are required to do financial disclosures. We are required to disclose the superintendent's contract, which is in your board packet, and all of this again will be posted on the website tomorrow as well too. We're required to be transparent with superintendent and board member travel. Again, this was a COVID year, so this is less than normal, but you see all of the travel for the previous board members and interim superintendents and superintendents as well. We are required to delineate it in those categories: meals, lodging, transportation. Other is mostly registration for conferences that board members and the superintendent travel to. We're also required to disclose any superintendent consulting. That is someone who is a superintendent for us, and at the same time, while they're serving as superintendent, also doing consulting work and getting paid for that work for another district. And we did not have any of those three superintendents report any consulting pay while they were superintendent or interim super for our district. Gifts received, none were reported. Just to give you in your board packet, there was one disclosure I was still missing. I have updated it because I didn't receive that disclosure in the meantime. But no gifts were reported by board members and the superintendent from September 2019, August 2020. Just to the way that the law states is it only has to be reported if the total for the whole year exceeds $250. Otherwise, you don't have to report it in this financial disclosure. Same thing, any business transactions as well. None were, all of those superintendents, interims, and also board members reported that they had no business transactions with KISD during this period. Now, that's the end of the presentation, so I'll take any questions from any members of the board or the public.
Yeah, I have a clarification question on that last page, business transactions between KSD, superintendent, board members, that's within each other. So if a board member gave a present or something to the soup, or the soup gave a present to the board members, is that what it's explaining?
No, that is if we have any dealings with KISD.
Do we need to report gifts given or received from the superintendent?
You're talking about the previous slide, gifts received by superintendent / board members.
Yeah, between each other.
To each
To
other.
each other.
If it is in your capacity as a board member and overall it exceeds $250 for the year.
Thank you.
We'll take any other questions.
Any further comments from the public? If not, this public meeting is adjourned at 5:28 p.m.